Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. It's getting steamy in classrooms with no air conditioning as temperatures soar. NDP leader Marit Stiles was in Windsor calling on the provincial government to cool them down. Plus, a Windsor police officer is facing 4 charges of sexual assault. We have the details tonight. And the province has promised to preserve 2 trees as they expand Highway 3 in Kingsville. We tell you more about the 2 special oaks. As this heat dome continues, parents and teachers are telling CBC News the heat inside some schools is becoming unbearable. Ontario's NDP leader was in Windsor today to call on the province to provide some support. The CBC's Dale Molnar was there.
On days like today, when it reaches 42 degrees with the humidity, parents and teachers are telling CBC News children are going home from school sick. And the conditions inside some of the non-air conditioned schools are making learning difficult.
It's hard to concentrate in school. The heat gets unbearable for them, but the teachers do try their best to accommodate them by giving them heat breaks and water breaks and extra fans in the classroom.
Ontario NDP leader Marit Stiles stopped by Prince Edward School and spoke with teachers about the conditions. She's calling on the Ford government to increase funding to allow all schools to be air conditioned.
And unfortunately, the provincial government, whose responsibility it is, has not prioritized addressing the climate crisis, addressing the heat conditions.
We have students that are medically compromised that are in these buildings. That's making them even sicker. We have staff in these buildings that are medically compromised and are getting sick.
The head of the union representing the educators says teachers are actually spending their own money to buy fans and provide refreshments.
So we have education workers funding the system themselves out of their own pocket to make this more comfortable for kids. The superintendent of business for the Public School Board says it's up to each school to provide fans out of the school's budget. She says they would like to have more funding.
Well, I think we would always advocate for more funding, no matter what the issue is. When we had the COVID pandemic, the board did receive quite a bit of money in order to put new HVAC systems in. And while that's not necessarily the same thing as air conditioning, a lot of these systems actually condition the air where it removes the humidity.
What I'll say about that is, in a perfect world, all of our schools would be air conditioned.
All 8 high schools in the Catholic system are air conditioned, as well as a third of the elementary schools. 47% of the schools in the public system are fully air conditioned, but in both systems, every school is at least partially air conditioned. Both school boards are advising parents and school staff to take measures to keep the kids cool.
About making sure that you stay hydrated, and we have bottle filling stations in every school, to not do strenuous activities, to draw the drapes, work with the lights off, anything that will help improve the occupier comfort.
So they're making sure that the kids are staying hydrated, they're wearing loose-fitting, breathable fabrics, that wearing hats and sunscreen and those kinds of things.
High schools in the area are all in the midst of exams. Classes at all schools will be ending in the middle of next week. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
Last summer, CBC monitored people in Windsor living without air conditioning. Today, we checked in on one resident who, along with her partner, chooses to live on their back deck. Josiah Sinanen paid her a visit to see how she's braving the heat dome.
Last year, 10 Windsor households without air conditioning were monitored for a period of 6 weeks. Inside, we placed one of these devices that monitors both internal temperature and humidity. Among our findings, we found people who learned creative ways to adapt. And today, in 2024, in Windsor, Essex, we're under what's called a heat dome. That's where hot, humid air is trapped without movement. Today's current projected high is 34 degrees Celsius. We're here to check in on one of the households that we monitored last year, and we're at the residence of Brenda Reedy. She has a unique situation where she's chosen purposefully to forgo air conditioning, and she's been sleeping outside in a makeshift fort with her partner Keith since April. We're here to check in on how she's doing in today's heat dome. Hello, how's it going? Good. How are you? Good.
How are you?
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you again.
Let's take a seat. Okay, so it's been a year.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you can remind us all why you chose to forego air conditioning.
A few reasons, really. Economy. My air conditioner unit was really old. It was actually a Chrysler that was refurbished when I bought the house 20 years ago, so not economical for energy at all. Cost, environmental reasons. I had made a comment that I couldn't live without air conditioning, and then I just didn't really like the way that sat with me. Like, I could live.
Right now, we're under what's called a heat dome. So they're saying the air is not moving at all. The nighttime temperatures are not falling very much.
Not really.
How have you found adapting to, have you noticed a difference?
Normally we have like a system for opening the windows at night and then closing them during the day to keep it cooler in there, which normally works. When I came home a couple days ago after work, like I walked in, noticed like it's cooler inside than it is outside, and I'm like, wow, we're doing really well. But over the last few days, we're not really getting much difference between the inside and the outside. Like, we can't really get it to cool down. We got a couple fans here getting a breeze. We got TV with Wi-Fi, so we're entertained. We got a chair, we have a table. We have everything we really need here.
So what time in the day do you come out here to prepare?
Like when you guys leave, I'll be hanging out in here.
Awesome.
Yeah, we minimize the time that we go inside during the summer.
Okay, and when did you set this up this year? Was this in May?
May 2nd. May 2nd was our first day out here.
Okay.
And I have not slept inside since, and I won't unless like rain drives me in the house.
A Windsor police officer is facing 4 charges of sexual assault. Staff Sergeant Ken Price was the subject of a 6-month investigation by Ontario's Special Investigations Unit. According to the SIU, the charges involve incidents with a woman between 2011 and 2015. The Windsor Police Service said the charges are connected to an alleged workplace matter that was first reported to police in January. Neither the SIU nor Windsor Police are providing further comment. Windsor Police also haven't said if Price has been reassigned or suspended with pay pending the outcome of the charges. Price was formerly on the board of directors for the Windsor Police Association and left that role last year. He's also been an instructor at the Police Training Center at Tilston Armory. He is scheduled for a court appearance in Windsor on July 18th. It's the 4th time over the past year that a Windsor police officer has been investigated for alleged sexual indiscretions. The SIU is a civilian watchdog agency that investigates police incidents that result in death, serious injury, use of firearms, or allegations of sexual assault. Orange construction fence that surrounds 2 trees planted off Highway 3 near Cameron Side Road in Kingsville makes them more noticeable. Otherwise, the average driver might miss the special pair of oaks, representing the lives of 2 best friends. That's, of course, unless you remember.
I think I can climb over.
It's been a while since Steve Cowell has visited these 2 oaks located between Essex and Kingsville on Highway 3. He helped plant them 33 years ago. At the time, they were only about 6 feet tall.
It's surprising how large these trees have gotten, so yeah.
With plans to widen the highway, the province has promised the trees will be preserved based on what they represent. A fatal vehicle collision, but also 34 years of friendship and the gift of giving back. On October 15th, 1990, students Shane O'Brien and Peter Taves were headed from Kingsville to the University of Windsor campus. The 20-year-olds were driving on Highway 3 when a school bus pulled out into the highway from the 9th concession. To avoid the bus, they tried to go around, but were hit head-on by a transport truck.
Oh, they were my really best friends. We hung out all the time. Every weekend, yep. Had lunch at school every day.
Cowell, who was waiting on campus for them to have lunch, said a friend called to tell him the news.
I couldn't believe it. So I tried calling their parents. Nobody answered.
The collision didn't just rock family and friends, but the entire community. And planning for a way to commemorate their lives started as early as the young men's joint funeral.
We all just wanted to do something because we were so kind of lost, actually.
In April of the following year, the trees were planted and a plaque was erected at the site. The province told CBC News in a statement that the Ministry of Transportation recognizes the significance and meaning behind the trees and what they represent, and have instructed the contractor to protect the trees and memorial plaque during construction. A spokesperson said a guardrail will also be installed along the shoulder of the highway in that location. It's a statement that leaves Peter Tave's sister optimistic.
Isn't it awesome that a government or a municipality can recognize something that's so important to the community and to the people that loved them?
As the trees for Peter and Shane continue to grow, so does the giving. Every year since their passing, a committee of their friends and family get together to select a student at Kingsville High School to win a bursary for post-secondary education. The criteria to apply is simple. Write an essay on friendship.
Shane and Peter, they were the best of my friends, and you know what? Anybody that ever met them knew that they were good guys. And you know, they're gone, but I always say as long as they're in our hearts, they're never gone.
No students were hurt after a school bus was involved in a collision in West Windsor this afternoon. It took place in the area of College and Wellington Avenues. A bus with minor damage was at the scene on Wednesday afternoon. A spokesperson for the Windsor Essex Catholic District School Board says 3 students were on board the bus at the time. They were unharmed, and their parents came to the scene to pick them up. The other vehicle involved sustained significant damage. Well, Colette, it's hard to believe we have what appears to be days left of these temperatures.
Yeah, we really do. And even, you know, when we get a break, it's going to kind of ramp back up again. So let's take you through all of this. And starting off with the heat warning, I think this is no surprise to anyone. The heat warning's still in place, and we're going to see it for southwestern Ontario, I would expect, through the weekend. But I'll go into that in a little more detail. And, you know, we talk a lot about if you don't have the benefit of air conditioning. I do want to just mention one thing, and maybe everyone knows this, but, you know, if you have a ceiling fan, but not necessarily air conditioning or even both, in the summer, you want that ceiling fan circulation counterclockwise, and usually one of those poles will change the direction. It's counterclockwise in terms of what you want in the summer. In the winter, the other direction, because you're trying to bring the heat down the walls and towards you. Our current temperature, 32, was up to 33, and then we've got to look at those humidex values in terms of what it feels like, and it's still feeling like 42. Sarnia as well, nearly 40 for Chatham, Kent, and yeah, when we have days where we're seeing conditions like this is when it can become, it compounds and becomes more and more dangerous. So just a little reminder here, heat exhaustion, that can be dangerous. Heat stroke really can be deadly, and there is a difference between the two. You need to treat either one, but people tend to get faint or dizzy, whereas it tends to be a throbbing headache when we're talking about heat stroke. They're sweating with heat exhaustion. It's actually, you wouldn't expect it, but the absence of it, and people tend to be dry and have a red face when they're dealing with heat stroke. Rapid weak pulse for heat exhaustion, but a strong and rapid pulse for heat stroke. And in any case, you need to treat them. And I know sometimes the bar at the bottom of the screen, I think you can see this right now, it's not there. So cool, you need to get them into an air-conditioned place, cold compress, this kind of thing, or a cold shower. But with heat stroke, when you're seeing these kinds of symptoms, it's a 911 call, an emergency situation. So if you're checking on your neighbors, these are the kind of things to know. The other thing to know is here we go, getting a few things kind of bubbling up with this moist atmosphere. Even under the heat dome, this can happen. We see it almost every day. They tend to be isolated, but still a few of those cells quite possibly going to be making their way here over the next hour or two into southwestern Ontario. So again, highly isolated, but they're there. Tomorrow, oh, we haven't even started summer yet? I know, tell that to Mother Nature. 32 at 10 to 5 as the summer solstice begins. Still going to feel like about 40 plus. I do want to get to the long range because showing you that it does extend into the weekend because the heat dome it's going somewhere, it's moving south, but it's not dissipating. So it's still going to be there, still going to have an impact on southwestern Ontario. We get a break Monday, but Meg, Tuesday, I expect the temperature to be back up to 30 or higher.
Call it, what a tip about the fans. I had no clue.
Well, there you go. Okay, good. If only one person, then it's you, Meg.
Absolutely.
I'm
Hopefully
sure
that helps.
Maybe needed that reminder.
Yeah, some of our other listeners, thanks so much for that.
Yeah, no worries.
Well, what could make this heat more unbearable? stinky fish flies who have emerged in parts of our region, and the complaints have started rolling in. We want to hear and see them. So for the next 2 weeks, CBC Windsor wants your most shocking fish fly photos. We'll air some of the photos on CBC News platforms on Fridays, and members of the CBC Windsor team will vote on the photos to find the most stomach-turning shot. The winner will take home some CBC merch. So please send your wildest fish fly images to windsor@cbc.ca with the subject line fish fly photos, and tell us your name, where and when the photo was taken, and any other information you think that we should know. The deadline for submissions is June 28th. Well, just behind those buildings there, the riverfront carnival is just starting up for the evening. Normally open during the day, they've delayed for extreme heat. We have more news coming up after the break. A lot of newcomers to Canada say they've been slapped with unduly high auto insurance rates. They complain that their experience and a good driving record in other countries isn't being taken into consideration. CBC's Lisa Shing reports.
The cost of living is already a big issue right across the country, but even more so for newcomers, especially when it comes to auto insurance. A lot of them come here and they need a car to get to work, especially in the smaller centers or places where there isn't reliable public transit. But a lot of them don't even know that you need car insurance in the first place. And once they sort all of that out, the expense of that per month is also a big hit to them. I spoke with Hamid Yousafzai, who came to Canada a couple of years ago from Afghanistan, and he's currently paying roughly $300 a month, even though he's been driving for the last 7 years before he came to Canada. He gave a letter to his insurance company from the embassy saying so, but that did not do a lot to change what he pays per month.
I have to work in here, finding my expenses here, finding my whole to support whole family over there, and also support to pay the insurance as well. So this is a little bit hard for everybody.
Some settlement agencies tell me that a lot of these newcomers have to decide between paying car insurance, food, or housing, so the cost of living really balloons for them.
There could be different rules, different regulations, different record keeping, different guidelines in general when it comes to determining fault and fault assessment in insurance. And because of that, records can sometimes be a little bit difficult to use to assess risk.
It's hard to compare insurance rates from across the country because systems differ between provinces. Some operate under a public system, others operate under a private system like in Ontario. But it's safe to say that most provinces and companies don't factor in a newcomer's previous driving experience outside of the country. Now, some companies will consider that driving experience if you show them proof. They will gift 3 years of driving experience in this country, for example, but ultimately it doesn't make a huge difference until you can prove that you can drive safely in this country. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
There is growing fee frustration among Canadian air travelers. The airlines say they're cutting fares, but they're also adding charges, and in many cases for services that used to be free. The federal government says it's going to take action, but that hasn't gotten off the ground just yet. CBC's Sophia Harris has more.
Thanks for calling WestJet.
Jana Fadovic was shocked when she called WestJet to book a family trip to Phoenix and learned she must now pay to book flights by phone.
For econo fares, there will be a $25 fee plus taxes.
I just feel like it's just a money grab.
Airline fees aren't new, but some major carriers are now charging for features previously included.
It's just pricing people out of being able to fly.
Air Canada also recently fielded customer complaints after introducing a fee for economy seat selection at check-in. And that's not all.
Oh yeah, no carry-on luggage, no carry-on bag.
WestJet came under fire on social media this month after revealing new details of its lowest fare, now called Ultra Basic. Customers must pay extra for overhead carry-on, and if they don't pay a fee for seat selection, they'll be seated at the back of the plane.
So what do you think of Ultra Basic? It's like they're trying to punish people for wanting to pay less. It's like, fine, you think you can pay the least amount for a ticket? Well, we'll show you.
Air Canada and WestJet told CBC News service charges benefit passengers because they only have to pay for the features they want. Even so, Ottawa has pledged to make airline fees more transparent, but it has no action plan as of yet.
Transparency is something that is a good thing.
This consumer advocate says airlines should display optional fees alongside the ticket price.
It would be much easier for consumers to have a full idea of what they're paying and be able to compare prices.
However, more transparency won't bring an end to airline fees.
We don't need to pay for customer service. Customer service should be provided.
Determined not to pay WestJet's phone charge, Fadovic booked her tickets online, reluctantly. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
Breakdancing seniors. It's a thing. We tell you more coming up after the break. The Canadian government is formally listing Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity. The IRGC is a branch of the Iranian armed forces that answers directly to Iran's supreme leader. It shot down a Ukrainian Airlines flight over Tehran in January 2020. 175 passengers, including 55 Canadian citizens and 30 permanent residents, were killed. The move further expands Canada's sanctions and restrictions against Iran.
The consequences of a listing under the criminal code under Section 83 are significant. Most significant is the aspect of financial transactions or monetary support for listed terrorist entities. So this is important to underscore. It relates to banking transactions, financial transactions of various sorts. But what is also important to underscore is that there needs to be what's called an elevated mens rea requirement. So that's an elevated criminal intent. People would need to be sending money that they would be knowing where it is going and intending that it be used for the support of the terrorist activity in question. So it's important for Canadians to understand the consequences of this listing.
Some sad news from the sports world. Baseball legend Willie Mays has died at the age of 93.
There's a long drive, way back in center field, way back, it is.
That's Mays making the amazing over-the-shoulder grab known as the catch. Probably the most iconic play in baseball, called the Say Hey Kid. Mays is widely thought of as the greatest player in baseball history. He won the league's MVP award twice and won the World Series with the then New York Giants in 1954. In 2018, the award was renamed the Willie Mays World Series MVP Award. At 93, Mays was baseball's oldest living Hall of Famer. Canada's second largest airline, WestJet, is canceling flights and parking planes in anticipation of a strike. The airline says it will cancel 40 flights by the end of today, affecting about 6,500 passengers. WestJet's maintenance engineers and other technical workers have issued a 72-hour strike notice. They can walk off the job Thursday evening. The two sides have been trying since November to reach their first collective agreement. The company has asked the federal government to appoint an arbitrator. Some young at heart seniors are busting a move in a new dance group in Tokyo. The breakdancing club is the only one in Japan made up entirely of elderly citizens. It was formed to encourage seniors to stay young through exercise. A 38-year-old former breakdancing champ coaches the group in practices, performances, and competitions. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.